I'm Leslie Newsom,
I'm Joe Newsom
and we're going to give our testimony.
today.
I'll start. I was raised in the church when I was a child, from the first grade to high school. During seventh and eighth grade, I didn't learn very much adult-wise because I was the teacher of fourth graders. And I've been a teacher of fourth graders most of my life, so I didn't learn much until we came to this church. Um, I was I taught Sunday school and Bible school during that time, so I missed a lot. And when I did go, I did actually go to church, but that didn't soak in. Joe and I got married when we were 18. So that was the end of church for me. We didn't go to church after we got married. Uh, in fact, uh, well, when the kids were in like 5 years old to third grade, right in there, I did take them to church those years, those about 4 years I took them. But then again, I was still like a kindergarten teacher. I wasn't an adult learning adult things about the Bible. Uh, and then after that time, I went to his school, which was bars. We drank, I cussed like a sailor. and, uh, and, but in 2021, Joe was home reading the Bible. I didn't know that he even had a Bible, much less I was working and he was home reading the Bible. And he came and told me that he was going to go to church. I said, oh, okay. Not without me. But the kids were going to the preschool at the First Baptist preschool, our little great grandkids. And we'd come to their programs, and that's when we got introduced to the church, and that's when we decided that this was the church we were going to go to. And let's see, what else do I want to say? Then during now 9/11, right after that happened, Billy Graham had a service on TV, and while he was giving that service, I prayed and I asked Jesus to come into my heart at that time, and he did. And from then on, I have been going to church and studying his word, teaching his word, and trying to learn everything I can. And Joe and I went, he said he was going to go forward. I said, okay, I'll go forward with you. And then right after that, a couple of weeks, we were baptized here at this church. Okay, and we've been here ever since. Now it's your turn.
My story was that we, when we were kids, I was 12 years old, and we went to this church out in the middle of the country. And the church, so we got baptized, but I didn't understand what that baptism was about. It didn't register. I was 12 years old, and we probably went to that church for 3 or 4 months, and then we all got baptized. And so that was when I was about 12. And then from then on, probably, I don't know how I always got it, but I probably always drank from the time I was about 14 or 15, all the way up till I was 57. And so we I lived a life of bars and that crazy life. I was successful in business, so I had this big head that, he's really somebody special because, and boy, that was wrong. Anyway, I found that out later, but, anyway, so, it's like she said, we started coming to a couple of the, grandchildren's programs from the preschool, and they had them in the church, at Sanctuary, and so that kind of started it, but before that, I had back surgery, and that was in 2001. I think it was like the early part of the year. And anyway, my brother-in-law had came over, and they were go to church, really good church people. And he left his Bible here. And before, when it was begotten and wrote in that terms, I didn't understand any of it, so I didn't even bother to try to read it. But I picked up that Bible and I started reading, and the more I read, the more I got interested in it. And I read it like a story, because that's exactly what the Bible is. It just starts out in the beginning. It's just like a novel. It has a beginning, and Christ was sort of the ending of the Bible, even though it goes on. But so anyway, I picked that up and I started reading it, and I don't know, the more I read it, the better I liked it. And, it was so far-fetched from anything that I was accustomed to reading. And so anyway, that went on, and I got to where the Israelites was going to cross the Jordan. And at that time, our pastor was Pastor Eby here at this church, and we were still coming into, not every Sunday, but we were coming some. And he went to Israel, and while he was gone, I couldn't wait for him to get back, because I wanted to find out, well, did you go there where they crossed the Jordan and put them 12 stones? That was a big thing in my heart. And so anyway, come back. Unfortunately, he didn't go there, but he did bring back some water from the Jordan, and I'll tell that story a little bit. But anyway, so that was kind of how we got here, but we still hadn't been baptized or hadn't went forward. And one night I was down at the local bar, and while I was in there, the guy that owned it, they were going to do something that I don't know. Probably before I would have went, but after beginning to read and becoming a little bit involved with Christ, well, when that guy said it, it really offended me. I don't, and I didn't think anything could offend me, but that did. And I think it was Jesus called me out of that bar. And so anyway, I left after he did that, and I never went back. But I did continue to drink a little bit at that period. There's probably 3 or 4 months that it went on. And anyway, Leslie and I went down and we was having lunch. And we was having Mexican food, and I normally ordered a beer when I had Mexican food. Well, I noticed that I hadn't drank for 6 weeks. Man, I couldn't believe Joe Newsom didn't drink for 6 weeks. Anyway, I told Leslie, I said, I'm gonna go 6 months. And that's been 23 years ago. I just never, and that life was just, I just hate thinking about that life before, but anyway, that was the way it started. And so anyway, so after that, we went forward and got baptized, and then about probably 4 months after we were baptized, I was in this little room in part of our bedroom, and I was on my knees praying, and I was on my knees, and I was praying, and I realized that I was the one that put the nails in Christ's hands and his feet for my sins. And I broke down, cried, and then I had this feeling come over me. And I didn't know nothing, I was new. And so I was down at the Bible store and I was looking for a book, and I told that lady about it. She said, well, you just got anointed with the Holy Spirit. That was another good part, that kind of helped the walk.
And that had been happening to me too, and I didn't realize what it was. I didn't know what that feeling was until she told us.
So anyway, we it just become our passion, the church. That was it. Christ become, and every Sunday, every Wednesday, anything that was going on that was associated with Christ, we were here. And at that time, our church had gotten down pretty low as far as attendance, and the pastor here on Sunday night had a Bible class, and most of the time it was mostly Leslie and I. It was almost like one-on-one, and for a full year, that was incorporated into us. And so we learned so much within that period of time, because it was just like, I guess, going to seminary school. He would tell us, and we'd go home, we'd study, and until it touched us, and so that went on for a year. And then after that, because we were business people, then we got involved in running the church. She became financial secretary, and I was on the board. And at that time, the women of this church was holding it together. There were no men on the board. It was all women. And so, they started bringing me in, and they had a deacons board at that time. And this is just, I'm not bragging, this is just to tell you how the situation was. And that the men had stepped away, and you were supposed to be in church for like 3 years before you could even get on that board. Well, it was so bad, I become the lead of the deacons.
The head deacon.
In 1 year. So, you can just imagine how our church was at that time as far as the leadership, and the women, if they hadn't have been doing what they were doing, they were the ones that held this church together.
That's what,
I don't know how many
it's
years.
unreal.
And so they started involving us more and more, and we become more and more involved in parts of the church, and so that was the other thing. And what we did to begin with, a lot of it is we did Wednesday nights. We completely did the whole meals and served it, and cleaned up, done all that. But when I first started, my favorite thing was to wash dishes. Because, man, that was an easy part. You didn't have to worry about nothing. All you had to do was get those dishes clean. Of course, I accused people of running them back through 3 or 4 times. But anyway, that was a big thing, and we served that. We did it for years, and sometimes then we got to where we could alternate with some people, because we had some more people come in and help us. But that was a big ministry for us at that time, was just doing the meals on Wednesday night. And it didn't seem like you were forced to do it, it was fun to do. And then her feet got really bad. She had a lot of pain, so we started cooking at home. And we'd cook at home, and then we'd bring it down and serve it. So that went on for a while, and then it just got so bad that we wasn't able to do that anymore. And then other people stepped up. So that was a big part of what we did and what we really enjoyed. And the thing that was is that how you got to know people. You think about Wednesday nights, and you guys attend, so you realize that that's a time that we sit down and talk to one another. A lot of people come on Wednesday night, they don't come on Sunday. But the thing of it is they're just as welcome on Wednesday as they are on Sunday. Of course, I'd like to see them come,
It's almost like having two different churches.
Sometimes that's the way it looks, but, you know, there was a lot that went on, but
A lot of it is that, you know, Christ just kept working in our lives, and he, you know, how could somebody, we were 57 years old, how could somebody our age come in and something completely turn that world upside down that we were accustomed to? And all of a sudden it was, you know, we thought we were leading the good life, as you hear people say. Man, that was not true. That was an awful life. And we didn't realize it, you know, and then, you know, we were so fortunate that our grandchildren were at that age, and they'd never seen us liquored up or anything, you know, because that had already passed away. And they were still pretty young. They were probably five or six,
The
something like
oldest
that.
one was probably 5 or 6.
So, and they,
And younger.
so, you know, we're thankful for that, but, you know, God has timing, and I think about that back surgery. I think about that Bible being left there, and that was God, it wasn't. And, you know, he's helped us in a lot of ways, you know, and, you know, like I say, you know, we're fortunate enough that we took what we learned going through life and applied it to church, but we only applied the good parts. We left that other world alone, and so anyway, so that was the beginning. And then as the pastors, we've changed pastors a few times, and each one of them had a certain part of it, you know, that they mixed in my life, and it would change a little bit as one went from the other one. Pastor Eby, when it was here when we first came, his was a lot of agape love, and that was what he taught, was agape love and loving one another, and he spent a lot of time on that through the services and through our Bible teaching, and then he got close to retirement, and we had dwindled again in the amount of people that were coming. And so we did 40 days of purpose. My nephew was down in Bakersfield, and he got saved, and he was telling me about this great Bible class that they had, the 40 days of purpose. And so I went and talked to Pastor John, and so we brought that in, and then our church expanded again with that. At one evening, my friend Doug Grant, he was with the church here a long time, so we had a Bible class in that 40 days purpose, and we had 22 second and third graders. That's unbelievable, you know, and man, we had a good time with those kids. And so that 40 days of purpose, we finished that up,
And Doug's wife, Linda, and I had the little kids, 3 years to 7 years. And some nights we'd have 13 little tiny kids to take care of it. Oh my goodness. We'd just let them play. It was impossible to teach them anything.
and that's the other thing too, you know, is that while I've been here, I've had all age groups of Bible class. I had, like I said, the second and third, and then we had a middle. I did that one for a while, and then I did high school. And, you know, because I was telling you, the workers were few. So when somebody needed something, you just step up and took over that one. And, but the thing of it is every time that we went through these Bible classes teaching, we learned as much as the ones we were teaching. And, you know, that's went on and on and on. But each one of these pastors was a little different. And then after Pastor John retired, then we had a temporary pastor, Pastor Estes, and he was a fisherman of men. And he was always talking about fishing. In fact, he took me and one of my other friends fishing before, but,
Then he takes some of the younger guys out of the congregation and take them fishing, and he would talk to them about coming to the Lord and fishing for men. He was really good with the guys.
you know, and I spent a lot of time with the pastors here, and with him, he was like you said, a fisherman of men, and he, I asked him one time, I said, well, how does that work? He says, well, he says, when I do a sermon, because we was talking about sermons, he said, what I do, he said, first I put the bait on, and I throw it out there, and then when they start nibbling a little bit, he said, then I hook them and bring them in. And that was pretty much the way he worked his sermons. It was something, but like I said, you know, you learned a little bit from every time you had a different pastor. And then, we had Pastor Mike Sheldon, and he came and he was a temporary for about a year. He got his feelings hurt really bad in the church, so he didn't want to be a pastor for about a year, and he stayed here a whole year. And then finally he told us that he would be a pastor, and he stayed for about 10 years, and then he got cancer and passed away. That was another time. And then, so after he passed away, then we become partners with South Valley over in Lemoore. And that was quite a process, you know, getting that into the works and agreements, you know, because there was certain things we wanted, certain things they wanted. And gradually we got it worked down to that. And then what happened was they were so far away, it was like probably an hour and 20 minutes or something for their church to our church. So that became a roadblock in it. And, you know, again, it's God's timing. So we separated ways, and
We did have COVID during the end of that too.
yeah. And when they were still in, then COVID come. And when COVID come, the pastor, he didn't want to come over here because he had young kids. And we had a lot of elderly people in there. A lot of what my friend said one time was a bunch of cotton heads, white hair. so anyway, that went on.
And they were both cottonheads too, them guys talking.
But we had quite a few elderly people here, so me and Dan Valletta decided that rather than get somebody sick and go through that process, and then the government was shutting them down too. But ours was mostly, our whole thing was is we didn't want to get somebody sick. So it was easier to just to let the church close for a while. And then as it was going on, then the janitor here, well, here's a guy sweeping the floor, taking care of everything here, and he was kind of overseeing everything clean and, you know, taking care of that time during the COVID. And that went on for a couple months. And then me and him was talking. He said, why don't we go back out on the front yard? We can go outside and we can meet out there. So we set up chairs, and our janitor prayed. And, you know, you just wonder how those things happen. And there was, I think, 11 of us from the original congregation that was out there, and then we collected a few more people, but I think there was 11 of us. It might have been more, I don't know for sure. It seemed like that was the number. And then so that went on a while, and then we had Pastor Frank, I can't think of his last name. He come and did some services outside, and then Pastor Lowe come and he said he would do temporary, and he said, but what this church really needs is somebody younger, because he was about the same age I was. And so then, so that went on for, I don't know, maybe 6 months. And then the good part of the story is Pastor Marshall and Pastor Larry Lopez heard that, you know, where we were at in our church. And so they come down and they met with Dan and I, and Pastor Marshall said they wanted to start a discipleship class. Well, this discipleship class, I think Leslie and I don't know if anybody else in the church came, but we went, and man, you know, he was teaching some things that this church needed, and even the people in that class needed. Really,
A lot of guys from different, like school teachers and different people in the community were in the class besides us.
and when he did that Bible class, then that took off, and then Pastor Lowe, you know, he was kind of sick, and you know, he's still having trouble with cancer, but he asked Pastor Marshall to do some sermons on Sunday, and then so Pastor Marshall did, and then he was, you know, he just really was doing a good job. So we asked him if he would be lead pastor and take over our church, and since that time he's been here 4 years. Man, that time flew. I thought he'd only been here a couple. We were talking about the other night. He said he'd been here 4 years. Well, you know, he it's a whole lot different leadership, you know, from one pastor to another. And I think when he came was what we really needed, you know, that type of leadership. And, you know, I don't think we've ever had a Bible teacher here that could even come close to quoting all the verses and doing everything. And as a pastor, man, he's just amazing. He's all over that. I love being in his Bible classes. He's always, you know, and it's not just one verse. He's capable of going through the other verses too. And so since he's been here, you know, our church has increased in numbers. And, you know, we're pretty normal. It's kind of been low the last few weeks, but we got up to like 65, and that was pretty consistent for a while. And it'll come back again.
That's because of vacation and then kids out of school and things like that.
But it'll grow again. But being a part of this, you know, all this time. And one other thing is that when we came here and I kind of got established in the church, is that I said I would stay in this church, and don't think there hadn't been some conflicts. I've had conflicts. Well, normally if
They
you're a
follow
leader,
him.
if you're a leader, you normally get into conflicts, and I got into some conflicts. But anyway, I said that the only way that I would leave this church was if God moved me, and I've never felt like God wanted me to go anywhere else. And now that we're at this age, you know, we'll probably finish up our lives here, and so it's not too far off when you get our age, but it's good. We know where we're going, and you know, I give a lot of, well, God was the one that brought us here, one way or the other, through grandchildren. It doesn't matter how you get here. It matters what you do after you get here. And the past is a past, and our future, even though we're been here 23 years, is still God forward, you know. And so anyway, and that's our story, you know. And I hope I haven't bored you guys with the fact that this church and what's happened, what transpired, and how God's moved us each little step, each little ministry, each little thing here, each thing there. But he's always worked in our lives in the time we've been here.
this is the best way to raise your children is in the church and let them get this background of knowing Jesus from ground up. It never leaves you. Like, I had it only through fourth grade, you might say, but it never left me when I got back to 57 years old and come back. I still remembered being with, I never forgot Jesus the whole time. And if those mothers can teach those little ones that, that would be awesome.
You know, and like I said, you know, this is like a second life to me. And I was like 57 when we got baptized. And I would strongly, whatever they do, is to get God young in life. Because when you look back on the mistakes you made, the people you hurt, that all goes along with that kind of life. And you know, there was never no peace. I never got up in the morning that I didn't wonder what I'd done to somebody the night before, whether I'd abused them in any way. And when Christ come into my life, and that's why I'm saying it's important that they have Christ in their life, because there's a peace there that you just can't get from this world. And the only peace, and that peace, when you have it, it not only transpires from within you, it transpires to the other people around you. And I think that the last years, you know, it's like our marriage has been so strong compared to before. You know, I mean, this is just, you know, we loved each other, but when you add Christ in it, you get a special love that goes on between a wife and a husband, and your children. There's a difference between your children looking down on you or looking up to, respecting you. And that's why I was saying it was so important to me that my grandchildren hadn't seen that. I wish my children hadn't, but they did. But you know, this is the regrets that I have, and then I have the good part where even if I was old, that once God come into our lives, it just changed everything. And like I said, you know, you run wild for 57 years, and then all of a sudden you can turn your life upside down, and you think you did it, but it was God. And man, who wants to go back to that kind of background? And everybody I talk to, you know, nobody wants to go back. And that was one of the other things too, is that when we went forward, that song, No Turning Back, we agreed one thing, is that neither one of us, if the other one walked away, the other one could continue without. So, but the biggest thing is just having God in your life, and raising your children in it, and you think that other life's good until you get out of it. So I would recommend any young men to do that. You guys are on the right track. And sometimes people fall away, but you can always come back to Him. You just never know ending. I think that when you have God, you're gonna cut down. You're gonna go. When you got that third string, being Jesus in the marriage, when you got that third string intertwined in there, then you're going to go a good way. And it's not that everything's going to go perfect. You're going to have some disagreements, but if you just remember that through life, if you continue to hold on to the good, and what I'm saying that is holding on to Jesus and never letting go. I know sometimes it seems like you let go, but He's always with you, just like she said. And that period of life will grow and grow and grow. And you know, the Marshalls are a fine example of that. I don't think, you know, I've been around, and I love that family. I just love them because, you know, of, you know, I can walk up and hug any of them. And I know that through talking to Pastor Marshall and Tamsin is that what they did, you know, is they spent time with their children. And I think that's the biggest thing. If two parents will do it together with the children, then they're going to have a successful life. They may not be rich or any of that, but man, just not to have that life that I had, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys can understand how much I hated that, you know, and you know, sometimes they say that he let you run wild so that when you get it, you get it. And so, man, I think that we did.
Yeah.
We have.
And our children have seen this. They were grown when we went forward, and they've seen us do this, and so they're really happy about it, and said, please don't change and don't go back.
So you know, and you know, I hope her story has painted what it was like before and what it is now. You know.
So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, because it definitely brought tears to my eyes. I pray that you guys all got something from it. If you know anybody who's married who may be going through some struggles, send them this video, because it can definitely help make heaven crowded. But I love you so much. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any testimonies or anything you want to share, ask questions, you already know, comment down below or message me. Jesus loves you and I love you. Bye.